Hi, I am Sophia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
Let me back up. My name is Tegan Carter, and for the last 10 years, my family has treated me like I'm invisible. Not because I did anything wrong, because I didn't do what they wanted. I didn't join the family real estate business. I didn't marry the right person. I didn't show up to every holiday with the perfect Instagram-ready life. I chose a different path, one that made sense to me but looked like failure to them. My brother Marcus was the golden child. Always had been. He joined Dad's company right out of college, married a woman Mom handpicked, bought a house 3 streets over from my parents. He did everything right according to their script. I became a data analyst for a tech startup. Quite work. Behind the scenes work. The kind of job my family didn't understand and therefore didn't respect. "You're still doing that computer thing?" Dad would ask every Christmas. "It's not a real career," Mom would say loud enough for everyone to hear. Marcus never said much. He'd just smile and change the subject to his latest real estate acquisition or his promotion or his son's private school acceptance. The subtext was always clear. He was winning at life and I wasn't. What none of them knew was that my computer thing had evolved significantly over the years. That tech startup I joined, it went public in 2019. My stock options were worth $8.2 million when I cashed them out. I reinvested carefully, diversified into real estate, tech funds, and strategic partnerships with growing companies. By 2022, my portfolio was worth $34 million. I didn't tell my family because I'd learned early that money wouldn't change how they saw me. It would just make things worse. They'd either accuse me of lying, demand I invest in Marcus's projects, or find new ways to dismiss my success as luck rather than skill. So I stayed quiet. I showed up to holidays in my normal clothes, drove my normal car and let them think whatever they wanted to think. Then Dad got sick. It started with a cough that wouldn't go away. By the time they caught the cancer, it was stage 4. He had 6 months, maybe less. The family rallied. Marcus was there every day, managing Dad's business affairs, handling doctor's appointments, coordinating everything. Mom praised him constantly. What would we do without Marcus? I visited when I could, usually on weekends. I sat with Dad, brought him books, tried to have real conversations. "You doing okay financially?" he asked once. "I'm fine, Dad." "You sure? Because if you need help." "I don't need help." He nodded, but I could see he didn't believe me. In his mind I was still struggling. Still the kid who chose the wrong path. 3 weeks before he died, he called Marcus and me into his room. Mom was there too, along with his lawyer Richard Hayes. "I've updated my will," Dad said, his voice weak. "I want you both to hear it now so there's no confusion later." Richard opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. "The house goes to your mother," Dad said. "The business goes to Marcus, as we've discussed. And the 8 rental properties in Florida, those also go to Marcus." I wasn't surprised. I'd expected this. "Tegan," Dad continued, "you're getting $50,000 in some personal items. Photos, books, things like that." Marcus tried to look sympathetic. "Dad, are you sure that's—" "It's fair," Dad interrupted. "Marcus has been running those properties for 7 years. He's earned them. Tegan's made her own choices." Mom nodded. "It's very generous, considering." Considering what? She didn't say. Considering I'd disappointed them. Considering I wasn't really part of the family business. Considering I'd never lived up to their expectations. "Okay," I said quietly. Dad seemed relieved. "Good. I'm glad we're all in agreement." I wasn't in agreement. But I also wasn't going to argue with a dying man. What I didn't tell them was that I'd had a very different conversation with Dad's father, my grandfather James, before he died in 2019. Grandpa James was different from Dad. He'd built his real estate portfolio from nothing, buying distressed properties in the 1970s and 80s, fixing them up, creating value. He understood hard work and strategy in a way Dad never quite did. Dad inherited his start from Grandpa but never really expanded it. He maintained what he had, grew it slowly, played it safe. Marcus was following the same pattern. Grandpa and I had always connected. He liked that I asked questions, that I wanted to understand the numbers behind the deals, that I wasn't impressed by surface-level success. In 2018, when he was 84, he called me to his house. "Your father doesn't see you clearly," he said. "Never has. He's too focused on what things look like to notice what they actually are." It's fine, Grandpa. It's not fine. But I'm going to do something about it. He pulled out a folder of documents. These are the deeds to those 8 rental properties in Florida. The ones your father thinks he owns. He doesn't. I do. I never transferred them to him, just gave him management responsibilities. I stared at the papers. I'm transferring them to you, Grandpa said. Quit claim deeds effective immediately. They'll be recorded with the county this week. Grandpa, I can't. You can. And you will. Because you're the one who actually understands what these properties represent. Marcus sees rental income. You see long-term value, strategic positioning, generational wealth. Dad's going to be furious. Your father isn't going to know. Not yet. These transfers are legal and binding, but they're not common knowledge. Let him keep managing them. Let Marcus keep thinking they're his future. When the time comes, the truth will reveal itself. Why not just tell them now? Because I want to see what they do. How they treat you. Whether they value you for who you are or only for what they think you can give them. He signed the documents. I signed the documents. His lawyer notarized everything. By the end of the week, I legally owned 8 rental properties in Tampa, Florida, worth approximately $3.8 million total. They generated about $22,000 per month in combined rent. Grandpa died 6 months later. At his funeral, Dad gave a speech about legacy and family and carrying forward his father's vision. Nobody mentioned the properties, because nobody knew they were mine. Dad died on a Tuesday in March. The funeral was large. Dad had been respected in the local real estate community, and people came from all over the state. Marcus gave a eulogy that had everyone crying. Mom held it together beautifully. I sat in the back and said nothing. The will reading was scheduled for the following Friday. Richard Hayes's office, 2 p.m. I showed up in jeans and a blazer. Marcus wore a full suit. Mom wore black Chanel. Let's begin, Richard said, opening the file. He read through the standard language. Sound mind, legal capacity, revocation of previous wills. Then he got to the specifics. To my beloved wife Dorothy, I leave the family home and all personal property contained therein, along with my life insurance policy valued at $500,000. Mom nodded, satisfied. To my son Marcus, I leave full ownership of Carter and Associates real estate, including all business assets, client lists, and accounts. I also leave the 8 rental properties located in Tampa, Florida, including all rental income and property management responsibilities. Marcus smiled. Dad knew I'd take care of them. Richard continued. To my daughter Tegan, I leave $50,000 in my personal library, including all books and photographs. That's very generous, Mom said, looking at me. It is, I agreed. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Well, I think that's pretty clear. Dad wanted to make sure the business stayed strong and the properties were managed properly. Absolutely, Mom said. Richard cleared his throat. There's actually one more thing. Your father included a note about the Florida properties. He wanted me to read it aloud. He pulled out a separate sheet of paper. I am leaving the Florida rental properties to Marcus with the understanding that he has managed them successfully for 7 years and will continue to do so. These properties represent significant family wealth and should be maintained within the family business structure. Marcus nodded. Exactly. That's been the plan all along. Dad's will gives me all 8 Florida rental properties, Marcus announced, looking directly at me. You get nothing. Mom nodded approvingly. It's what makes sense. Marcus has proven himself. I calmly said, interesting. Richard looked uncomfortable. Actually, there's a complication. What complication? Marcus asked. I need to verify the ownership status of those properties. Your father believed he owned them, but there's some conflicting information in the county records. What are you talking about? Mom demanded. I'm talking about the fact that the properties may not have been your husband's to distribute. Marcus laughed. That's ridiculous. Dad's owned those properties for decades. I've been managing them since 2016. Managing them, yes, Richard said carefully. But ownership is a different matter. Check the records, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. What? Marcus said. Check the Hillsborough County property records. Specifically, the quitclaim deeds filed in November 2019. Richard opened his laptop. His fingers moved across the keyboard. His expression changed. "Oh," he said. "Oh, what?" Mom demanded. "The properties were transferred to Tegan Carter on November 18, 2019. Quit-claim deeds signed by James Carter, your father-in-law, and properly recorded with the county." The room went silent. Marcus stared at me. "That's not possible." "It's very possible," Richard said, turning his screen around. "It's public record. All 8 properties. Transferred from James Carter to Tegan Carter. They've been legally hers for over 5 years. "This is a mistake," Mom said. "James would never." "Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing," I said calmly. "He owned those properties outright. He chose to transfer them to me. Dad never actually owned them. Grandpa just let him manage them." Marcus's face was turning red. "You're lying. You forged those documents." "Call the county clerk," I said. "Call Grandpa's estate attorney. Call anyone you want. The deeds are legitimate." Richard was scrolling through his screen. "She's right. These are properly executed and recorded. Notarized by David Chin, who was James Carter's attorney for 40 years. "Why didn't you say anything?" Mom asked, her voice shaking. "Because Grandpa asked me not to. He wanted to see how everyone treated me. He wanted to know if the family valued me for who I am or only for what they thought I could provide." "This is insane," Marcus said. "You can't just, you have to give them back. Those are family properties." "They are family properties," I agreed. "They're mine. Dad left them to me in his will. Dad left you something he didn't own. You can't inherit what was never his to give." Richard was reading something else on his screen. His expression darkened. "There's another issue," he said slowly. "What now?" Marcus snapped. "The rental income from these properties. Where has it been going?" "Into the business accounts," Marcus said. "Where it always goes." "Carter and Associates accounts?" "Yes." "And who has access to those accounts?" "I do. I'm the manager." "So you've been collecting rent on properties you don't own and depositing that money into business accounts you control?" Marcus froze. "That's how property management works," he said carefully. "Not when you're claiming the properties as your own," Richard said. "Not when you're treating the income as business revenue rather than client funds." I pulled out my phone and texted my investment manager, "Withdraw all funding from Harrison Development Group immediately." Within seconds, my phone buzzed with a confirmation. "What are you doing?" Mom asked. "Protecting my interests," I said. Marcus's phone started ringing. He looked at the screen and went pale. "I need to take this," he muttered, stepping into the hallway. Through the glass wall, I could see him arguing with whoever was on the phone. His business partner, probably. The one who was about to discover that their largest silent investor, the one who'd provided $3.2 million in capital for their latest development project, had just pulled all their funding. Richard looked at me. "How long have you known about this?" "Since 2019. Grandpa told me what he was doing and why." "And you just let Marcus manage the properties? Collect the rent?" "I was watching, Bernie. Waiting to see what would happen. Those properties generate about $22,000 per month in total rent," Richard said. "Over 5 years, that's over $1.3 million. Where is that money?" "Good question," I said. Marcus came back into the room. His face was white. "We need to talk," he said to me. "Privately." "Anything you need to say you can say here," I replied. "Please. Just, can we talk outside?" "No." He sat down heavily. "This is a misunderstanding." "What's a misunderstanding?" Richard asked. "The rent money. I've been managing those properties for Dad, for the family. The money went into business operations, property improvements, maintenance reserves." "Show me the records," I said. "What?" "Show me the property management records. Maintenance logs. Improvement receipts. Bank statements showing where every dollar went." Marcus looked at Mom. Mom looked at Richard. "I'd like to see those records too," Richard said. "Because if you've been collecting rent on properties you don't own and can't account for that money, that's a serious legal problem." "I've been managing them properly," Marcus insisted. "Then the records will show that." "This is ridiculous. She abandoned the family. She doesn't get to just show up and—" "I didn't abandon anyone," I said quietly. I built a life you didn't respect. There's a difference. Marcus stood up. This isn't over. Actually, Richard said, it very much is. The properties belong to Tegan. They've belonged to her since 2019. Any rental income from that point forward legally belongs to her. If you can't account for that money, you're going to need a very good lawyer. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining the law. Marcus looked at Mom. Say something. Mom's hands were shaking. How could your grandfather do this? He did it because he saw something in me that you never did, I said. He understood that success doesn't look the same for everyone. You let us think you were struggling, Mom said. You let us worry about you. You never worried about me. You were embarrassed by me. There's a difference. I stood up and looked at Richard. I'd like to formally request a full accounting of all rental income from those 8 properties from November 2019 to present. I'd also like to know if any property funds were used for non-property expenses. I'll start that investigation immediately, Richard said. You're really going to do this? Marcus asked. Destroy the family over some rental properties? I'm not destroying anything. I'm claiming what's legally mine. What Grandpa wanted me to have. Dad would be ashamed of you. Dad never really knew me. That's not my fault. I walked toward the door. Where are you going? Mom called. Home. I have work to do. We're not finished here. Yes, I said, turning back. We are. Marcus's phone rang again. And again. And again. His business partner. His bank. His investors. Harrison Development Group had been built on leveraged capital, including my $3.2 million which I'd invested anonymously through a fund structure. They'd used that money as collateral for larger loans, bigger projects, more ambitious deals. When I pulled my funding, the whole structure started to collapse. Within 48 hours, their lead bank demanded immediate repayment of a bridge loan. Their other investors started asking questions. Their biggest project, a mixed-use development in downtown Tampa, stalled. Marcus called me 6 times. I didn't answer. Mom called and left a voicemail. You're destroying your brother's life over a misunderstanding. Is this really who you want to be? I deleted it. Richard's investigation took 3 weeks. The results were delivered in a certified letter to my office. Marcus had collected $1,340,000 in rental income from my properties over 5 years. Of that amount, $180,000 went to legitimate property expenses, maintenance, repairs, property taxes. $240,000 went to property management fees, which he'd charged to himself. $920,000 was unaccounted for. Richard's forensic accountant traced the missing money through various business accounts. Most of it had been used for Harrison Development Group operations, covering shortfalls, funding payroll, financing new acquisitions. In other words, Marcus had been using my rental income as his personal business fund. This constitutes embezzlement, Richard wrote in his summary. The funds were taken without the owner's knowledge or consent and used for purposes unrelated to the properties themselves. I recommend immediate legal action. I forwarded the report to my attorney. She called me within an hour. This is clear-cut, she said. We can file criminal charges, civil suit, or both. Your choice. What do you recommend? Depends on what you want. Punishment, restitution, or just to be done with this family. I thought about it. I want restitution. Full repayment plus damages, plus all rental income going forward. And I want him removed from any management role with my properties. Done. I'll draft the demand letter. The letter arrived at Marcus's office on a Monday morning. It demanded $920,000 in restitution plus $180,000 in damages and legal fees. It gave him 30 days to respond before we filed a civil lawsuit. It also formally terminated any property management agreement and demanded immediate return of all keys, access codes, and property-related documents. Marcus showed up at my apartment that night. I watched him through the security camera, debating whether to let him up. Finally, I opened the intercom. What do you want? To talk. Please. I buzzed him in. He looked terrible. Exhausted, stressed, older than his 38 years. Coffee. I offered. No. Thank you. We sat in my living room. He looked around, at the furniture, the art, the space. Nice place, he said. Thanks. How long have you lived here? 4 years. What do you pay in rent? I don't. I own it. He nodded slowly. Of course you do. Silence. I can't pay you back, he said finally. Not all at once. We're in trouble. When you pulled your investment, everything started falling apart. That was your investment? He asked. Yes. Why? Because your business model was solid. Your execution was good. I believed in the project. But you pulled out. Because you treated me like garbage while spending my money. He closed his eyes. I didn't know it was your money. Would it have mattered? He didn't answer. The rental income, I said. Where did it really go? Business operations. We had shortfalls. Unexpected costs. I thought, Dad always said the properties were family assets. I thought I was just using family money for family benefit. Except they weren't family assets. They were mine. I know that now. You knew that 5 years ago. You just didn't believe it mattered. What do you want from me, Tegan? I want my money back. I want my properties properly managed, by someone who isn't you. And I want you to understand that success isn't measured by who impresses Mom and Dad. I'm going to lose everything, he said quietly. The business, the house, probably my marriage. That's not my responsibility. I know. I'm telling you what's happening. You made choices. This is the consequence. He stood up. For what it's worth, Grandpa was right about you. What do you mean? He told me once that you were smarter than all of us. That you saw things we couldn't see. I didn't believe him. And now I'm standing in your apartment, begging for mercy I probably don't deserve. I walked him to the door. I'll give you 90 days, I said. Payment plan. We'll work out terms through the attorneys. Thank you. Marcus. He turned. This didn't have to happen. If you'd treated me like family instead of like a disappointment, none of this would be happening. I know. He left. 3 months later, Marcus sold his stake in Harrison Development Group. The buyer was a private equity firm I happened to know well, because I'd recommended them through a mutual contact. The sale gave him enough money to pay me back in full, with some left over to settle his other debts. His marriage survived barely. He got a job managing properties for someone else's firm. Smaller role, smaller salary, but stable. Mom stopped calling after I refused to forgive the debt. Family should support family, she said. Family should respect family, I replied. We failed at that part. The 8 Florida properties are now professionally managed by a firm that sends me detailed monthly reports. The rental income goes into a trust I've established for future investments. I also bought 2 more properties in Tampa last year. The market's strong. Richard Hayes became my estate attorney. Your grandfather would be proud, he told me. I hope so. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted you to have choices. He wanted you to be secure. He gave me more than that. He gave me permission to live my own life. I saw Marcus at a coffee shop last month. He was with his son helping him with homework. He waved. I waved back. We didn't talk. Maybe someday we will. Maybe someday he'll understand that I wasn't the villain in this story. I was just someone who refused to be invisible anymore. Grandpa understood that. He saw who I really was and gave me the tools to prove it. The rest of the family is still figuring that out. But that's not my problem anymore. I have properties to manage, investments to grow, and a life to live, on my own terms with my own definitions of success. And every month when that rental income hits my account, I think of Grandpa and smile. He knew. All along he knew.